He's got to be.
And those were, for those folks that don't know, those were recorded by Glenn Campbell, just one after the other, went to #1, pop, country, easy listening, and but that's sort of a perfect transitioning, mentioning Jimmy Webb, because you wrote a song that was recorded by Emmylou Harris and none other than Glenn Campbell, called You Are, which was, I believe, nominated for a Grammy, so that must have felt pretty good to have one of your songs nominated.
Wow, you've done your homework. Yes, and the interesting thing is, I had pitched tons of songs to a guy named Don Lanier, who everybody called him Dirt, and he listened for songs for Glenn Campbell and all the other artists on, I believe he was on Elektra at the time. You probably, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember. I think it was Elektra Records.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Jimmy Bowen was the head of the label. But I just pitched the song, and of course, when he told me Glenn Campbell was going to cut it, I went, wow, and I said, well, who's the female? And then when he said Emmylou Harris, I just totally flipped. And the interesting thing is, Glenn Campbell's, whenever he would come to Nashville, he would stay at Marty Gamblin's house, who was heading up his publishing company at the time, and Marty's backyard backs up to our backyard, and Marty told me later that Glenn Campbell was over in their backyard hitting golf balls, and that he said, hey, Glenn, the little girl who wrote You Are lives right over in that house, and he said Glenn Campbell almost came over and to knock on my back door, and this was on like a Sunday morning. I think I would have had a heart attack. I would have loved that, but I had met Glenn before, but I guess he probably didn't remember I had opened a show for him in Phoenix. But I'm almost glad he didn't, because I would have been probably, in bed asleep in my nightie and looking like hell, and probably would have had a heart attack. So.
Another song that you wrote, we mentioned it by name earlier, and we were listening to it actually, a little bit of it when right before you came on the show, was Angels Among Us, which became a hit record for the group Alabama. So I was wondering if you could please tell us what inspired you to write Angels Among Us, because I know that there was sort of a personal story behind it that inspired you.
Right. Well, I had been having premonitions that something really bad was going to happen to me, that I was going to be in some kind of a bad accident. And this was before Christmas of 1985. It's been quite a while back. But this feeling would come to me right as I was drifting off to sleep, and then it'd be like I was hit in some kind of an impact, and that I'd sit up in bed and my heart would be like pounding. And anyway, this continued through the Christmas holidays. This continued through driving from Nashville to back home to Oklahoma. And I actually had to have my friend who was driving, my boyfriend at the time, I actually asked him to pull over a couple of times because I felt like we were going to have an accident. Anyway, Christmas came and went, and nothing happened. But on the eve of my birthday, January 24th, 1986, I was making myself a chocolate cake in the kitchen because I was going to have people over that next day, and a force literally took hold of my arm and pulled me out into the front yard, and I heard a very deep masculine voice say, "Be careful, this may be your last birthday." And I got this same fluttering in my heart, and I got weak at the knees, and I looked up at the sky, and it was a very crystal clear night where you could just see the stars so brightly. And I asked for more, what do you mean? And that was all I got. So I went back in the house, and I kept going over the words, "Be careful, this may be your last birthday, this may be your last birthday." And I knew it was connected to these terrible premonitions I'd been having. To make a long story short, that evening I had people over for a little birthday party. The very next day, January 25th, my band and I got up and we drove in our Dodge Maxi van to Albertville, Alabama. We played a benefit for policemen. And after the show, loaded up, we were sitting at a four-way stop light at sort of a highway intersection outside of Albertville, Alabama. And I looked out the left window of the Dodge Maxi van, and there was an 18-wheeler just hauling towards the intersection, and our light was red at the time. And then I thought, my God, if our light turns green, he's not going to be able to stop. And my heart started going wild, and I felt our driver take his foot off the brake, and we started moving, and I just yelled for him to stop. He never even saw the 18-wheeler. The 18-wheeler hit us in the left front, totaled the van. We spun around. We all got out of there with only sprained ankles, cuts, bruises, etc. And a split second later, we would have been broadsided, and we would have been killed. So I felt like that warning. After that, the premonitions were gone. I think that warning saved our lives. And when I got back to Nashville, I wrote down the title, I Believe There Are Angels Among Us. And I worked on the song for several years, and I had the chorus, and I was stuck on it. So right around Christmas of '92, I was in Oklahoma, and I was working on the house in my mom's house, and I called Don Goodman. I said, man, when I get back to Nashville, I've got to play you a song because I'm stuck on it. So in January of '93, Don Goodman came over, and I played him the chorus, and I said, would you help me finish this song? And when I looked up, he had tears running down his face, and he said, I'd be honored to. So we finished the song, and I took it over to Randy Owen in April, and they cut it like a couple of weeks later.
And so, did you have Alabama in mind when you were finishing writing it, or did you?
No, not at all. I knew that the song was a gift, and I knew it was from God, and I thought, boy, I just thought this has to be written, but I had no idea who would cut it because it was different. And when I took it over to Randy Owen, I took it over to his management company, and I left the little cassette there thinking, well, it's a long shot. But lo and behold, Randy Owen was going through some things in his life. His daughter had lost a very good friend in a car accident, and he said he played the little cassette for his youngest daughter, Randa, and she loved the song, and she'd say, Daddy, play me the song about angels. And then he got to where he'd start reading the lyrics to her, and that's what made him decide to just speak the first part of the first verse, was from reading the lyrics to his daughter.
And I was wondering, before we talk about your latest project, which is a really totally, I think it's different from probably most of what the folks would be familiar with your country stuff. But I was wondering, one of my favorite songs that you recorded was Talk Back Trembling Lips, which was you did a new version of it. It was originally Ernie Ashworth. He wrote the song and had a hit with it in 1964, something around that, 63. And the music video was played a lot on CMT when it was released in the early 90s, and you actually featured him, for those who haven't seen it, in his signature Talk Back Trembling Lips suit, and you had a matching outfit on. So how did you decide to record that song and then feature Ernie in the video?
Well, interestingly enough, now, the song was written by John D. Loudermilk. And you are right, Ernie Ashworth did have the first hit, and then, of course, Johnny Tillotson cut it on the pop charts back then. But Doug Johnson was producing me in the early 90s. I believe this was like maybe 91, maybe 1990, 91. I was briefly on Curb Records. And Doug Johnson said, hey, you remember that old song, Talk Back Trembling Lips? I just got a new demo on it, and I think I should cut it on you. So he played me the demo, and the demo was sung by Ronna Reeves. And I loved the treatment. And I said, cool, man. And of course I had remembered the song from Ernie and from Johnny Tillotson. So that's how I happened to cut that song. And yes, when we got ready to do the video, I had already met Ernie Ashworth when I would go out and play the Opry. And he would always have on one of those wild little lip suits. So I asked him if he'd be in the video, and he said he would. And oh my God, we had fun. He was dancing around and let me wear one of the lip jackets, and what a great man.
Yeah, I had forgotten that he didn't write the song, because he wrote a lot of his material. He's known as a songwriter too. But that's right. That's sort of funny how his signature song was one that he did not write.